The Garcia-Barrios face-off wasn't trash talk, it was chess. Garcia carried champion energy, relaxed posture, eye contact, and a playful promise of a bloody fight that sounded like a warning about how far he would go for the first belt. When the interviewer stressed Barrios' experience, Garcia shook his head, flashed annoyance, and reframed it as debatable. Then he attacked the trainer storyline, hinting inside knowledge and planting doubt about loyalty. Barrios stayed respectful but fidgety, breathing heavy at times and using fillers, yet his voice never cracked as he claimed higher IQ and more heart. Under the smiles, the belt stayed center stage. Let's talk about it. What you missed in the Garcia versus Barrios face-off. Let's talk about it. This is Ryan Garcia's opportunity to win a world title. He actually has never won a world title before. Ryan Garcia, he has the marketability and he has the visibility of a world champion. He has more visibility than some world champions, but he's never actually won a title. It goes to show, and I think it's a reference point in how important marketing is to a boxer. A boxer's profile is essential. Of course, from a boxing purist perspective, we like to look at what goes on in the ring. But unfortunately or fortunately, what happens outside the ring dictates your value, particularly if we're talking about boxing from a monetary perspective. And let's talk about this face-off. I think this face-off is interesting. Let's start off with the perspective of Ryan Garcia. Now, Garcia stated that it would be a bloody fight. And he stated it in like a jovial way. It wasn't like in a menacing way. And I thought to myself, why is he saying this? And why would someone say that? Does Barrios have a history of cuts? So is he trying to plant some doubt there? Or is this a declaration of how far he's willing to go? He's willing to engage in a bloody fight. And considering his loss to Rolly Romero, maybe he needs to encourage himself and to put himself into that psychological position that he is indeed a warrior. And I'm not saying he's not a warrior. You could argue that any boxer that steps into the ring is a warrior. But what we can say with regards to his loss to Rolly Romero is that for whatever reason, Garcia didn't roll the dice. He didn't take the risk. Now, when we look at Ryan Garcia, you can see that he spoke confidently. He was very confident in the way he spoke. He had confident body language. And to his credit, he was complimentary to his opponent for the majority of the time. Now, when the interviewer asked, I think a good question, and I'm paraphrasing here, he stated, what's more important, Barrios or the belt? So is the name of Barrios the importance, or is it the belt that has the importance? And Garcia was quite vague in his answer. But what I got from it was that it was the belt that's the focus. The focus is becoming a champion as opposed to fighting the brand of Garcia. And he didn't say that in a disrespectful way, but that is the focus. Obviously, you have context in boxing where the name is just as important as the title. The first reference that comes to my mind is when Evander Holyfield fought Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was such a huge brand, the baddest man on the planet. When you're fighting him, yes, there was a title at stake, but also there was that brand of being invincible, that psychological intimidation. So certain fighters have a brand, or certain fighters have a huge brand, think of Mike Tyson, and in certain fighters may have a brand, but it's significantly lesser. So therefore the title becomes a more prominent part. Let's talk about Barrios. So Barrios had some interesting psychology. He seemed a little bit fidgety, but he spoke calmly, but had a lot of filler words. A lot of ums, a lot of silences. That could be a reflection of his natural speaking style and a reflection that he's not media trained. Again, I say that respectively. There was some heavy breathing from Barrios, which may indicate some mild nervousness. This may be a reflection of nervousness towards the event as opposed to nervousness in fighting Garcia. And it might be a reflection of his personality, him being an introvert. Interestingly, and this is always a key sign, from what I saw, his voice did not crack. He stayed consistent. Barrios, like Ryan Garcia, was polite, but he stated that he thinks he has two significant advantages. That's what I remember. That's what I can recollect. And that's boxing IQ. And I think he said a better heart or a bigger heart. I think there might be some validity there. Barrios is a counterpuncher. From what I've seen, he has boxing IQ. And he's a courageous fighter. And I think when we look at Ryan Garcia, there's a question mark with regards to how courageous he is. So I can understand why Barrios would have that perspective. Now, going back to Garcia, let's transition back to Garcia. When the interviewer stated that Barrios has more experience, you can see that Garcia was kind of irritated and frustrated by that. And he was shaking his head. And his verbal response was that this is debatable. So that's what he said. But his body language could tell he was irritated. And his assessment of Barrios was, again, it was complimentary. He saw Barrios as a good fighter that was consistent. So he's consistent in all his performances. So he gave him the credit he deserved and acknowledged that he had good counterpunching ability. Now here came some mind games. He stated, and when I say he, I'm referring to Garcia, that the trainer of Barrios, who used to be the trainer of Garcia, he stated that he does not like to stop fights. So Joe Goosen does not like to stop fights. And he said this may be the detriment of Barrios. I feel like he's trying to plant some seeds there. Now, Barrios has Garcia's former trainer. And interestingly, Garcia tried to pitch this as an advantage to him. He states that, or he implied that because he knows the trainer, he knows his strategies, he knows how Barrios is training, and he implied that there's been a leak of information. So what is Garcia trying to do here? He's trying to implant doubt into Barrios' head about his trainer, not only with regards to his training practices, but also with regards to his loyalty. This strategy probably reveals that Garcia probably has some genuine concerns about a former trainer being in the opponent's corner. For example, has Joe Goosen seen vulnerabilities of Garcia, not only on tape, but in person, in camp, in sparring, etc.? Does he have the strategy, not just a strategy, but the strategy to beat him because he's trained him? He's been in close proximity with him. And on the flip side, is having a new trainer, is that beneficial for Barrios? Will his trainer, will Joe Goosen change his style, or will it complement his style? Think of this. Trainers are responsible for multivarious things: the boxing environment, the strategy of the fight, understanding the opponent, understanding your own fighter, getting your fighter to understand themselves, coordinating effective sparring, implementing effective drills, overseeing camp, etc., etc., etc. Now, Joe Goosen has boxing credibility. There's no doubt about that. But is he the right trainer for Barrios? So there's just a few more things I want to add here, just a few more things that we want to add. When we have psychology, or when we look at the psychology of Garcia, it's important to recognize something here. And that's the performance in the face-off was confident. But does the performance match the reality? Does he really have that confidence, or is it simply an act? Here's another thing. Positive psychology is important in boxing, which leads to the question, why is it important? Think of this. If you don't believe you can win, you increase the chances of defeat. So if you have a greater conviction, you better the chances of victory. And remember, the margins between winning and losing are relatively quite small. Now, of course, there are other elements to victory, because victory it's a group of things. It's multifarious. Let me give an example. It's correct strategy, having the right sparring partners, being optimal in condition, being optimal in nutrition, implementing the correct strategy on the night, etc., etc., etc. But conviction, i.e., what we're defining as positive psychology, is part of the process, but it's not the entire process itself. Just being confident of victory is not enough. So if Jack is confident of victory, but hasn't done a good training camp and hasn't made the right strategic adjustments, he will lose. However, if Jack works hard in camp, but doesn't believe he will win and believes he will lose, he is giving himself a disadvantage. So what are we saying here? We're saying, is Garcia's confidence, is it genuine? And I think that's a really important point. And think of this. In boxing, or if anything in life, any walk of life, generally speaking, you want to bring the best version of yourself. If you're a politician, you want to be the best with the words, and more importantly, best with the policies. If you're a doctor, you want to, of course, restore health, but you want to be the best doctor that you can be. If you're a student, whether you're studying in college or if you're studying at university, you want to do your best, bring the best version of yourself. What does this mean? Well, it means that Garcia, he needs to think, how can I bring the best version of myself? Because in his loss to Rolly Romero, that clearly was possibly one of the worst versions of himself. So he needs to make the necessary adjustments in this fight and focus on bringing the best version. And from the other side of the coin, Garcia needs to think the same thing. They both need to try and bring the best versions of themselves. And here's some questions to consider. Do face-offs actually matter? And if so, for whom? Let's put that in context. Does it matter to the fighters? Can a fighter go into a face-off and think, yeah, I know I can win now, or I have a psychological advantage over this person? So is it beneficial for the fighters, or is it beneficial for the public who just want to see, they want to see the behind the scenes, they want to see the narratives play out, they want to see the fight before the fight, they want to be involved. So does it matter, and who does it matter to? And we've kind of covered this, but can you really get a psychological edge in a face-off at this level? Or is it simply marketing? Is it just the marketing machine? And that marketing machine in boxing is important because, as I've stated many times, boxing has a very serious relationship with capitalism. And is feeling the energy of your opponent, is being in the environment of your opponent or in close proximity, is it an advantage or a disadvantage? And in the end, as I've stated, both boxers just need to bring the best versions of themselves. They need to train hard, be a student, consistently learn about them, learn about their opponent. They need to listen to their trainers. They need to practice various drills, and they need to focus on being the best possible versions that they can bring. Perhaps looking at it from the Garcia perspective and looking at it from his filter, perhaps the motivation of the title and the credibility, because when you think of the world title has that connection to the credibility. And perhaps we have a theoretical proposition that motivation of the title and that motivation of credibility may take Garcia to a different level. So that's the end of the video. As I've stated previously, I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. What does that mean? It means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, all you have to do is simply like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content, click here or click here. As I've stated in other videos, thanks for your time. Thank you. It is much appreciated. Peace.